Hey guys, we have the sign up and the login page just about done. So the next thing to do is the product page. But before we get into that, I want to fix our navigation because right now we have kind of an interesting way of how we want to do it because we don't want to start the user on the same page every time. Depending if they're logged in or not, we want to show them different pages. So for example, if someone has never used our app, we want to take them to the sign up page first, right? But if they have used our app before, we don't want them to be taken to the sign up page. We want to take them to the products page so they can directly see the products and buy or whatever. So how do we tell whether the user has used our app or not? Well, we are storing a JWT token in async storage, so we need to check that. But JWT tokens expire and they could be invalid. So what we need to do is we need to check a JWT token, and if it's valid, we're going to take the user to the page, to the products page, and then we're going to, if not, if it's bad or it's expired or they just don't have one, we're going to take them to the sign up page, and then from the sign up page, if they're already logged in, or if they already have an account, they can log in by clicking the login button. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, the first thing is I want to do a little bit on the back end because while we're checking the token, I thought it would be a pretty good idea to also refresh it. So I mentioned earlier that JWT tokens expire, and notice how this is how the user or the backend gets basically knows if a user exists, right? So it looks at the JWT token and calls this get user ID function. So what does this guy do? If we look at utils, we can see this function, and this is where the backend reads that JWT token. It verifies that it's legit, and then it will go ahead and return the user ID. But notice it'll throw an auth error, or this function will throw an error too if it's expired or a bad token. So really we want to check this token to see, or we call this function to check whether the token is valid and also to get the user ID. So this is called before, for example, creating draft. For us, it's going to be like creating a product or getting the products. We want to make sure they're a good user and get the user ID because we need to attach the user to that. So we'll be using this function. So we want to make sure their token is valid. So we could just say the user has to log in every 7 days, right? You can set a length of when the user logs in. So right now, here's them signing the token, and they don't really specify a date, so I'm not sure what the default date is, but this is the library that they're using, JSON web token, and we can specify expires in, so we can say how many days it takes for the token to expire, and then we could just say every X days they have to come and relog in. But what I like to do better is refresh it occasionally, because if the user's using the app still, there's no reason to have them log in again. So the way we're going to do it for this, I've done it different ways before. Sometimes I just auto refresh, but for this one, what I'm thinking is every time the user not logs in but opens the app, we have to check the token anyway. So while we're checking the token, we might as well refresh the token at the same time. So let's create this refresh token. It's going to be a mutation on the back end here, and while we're refreshing, we need to have a valid token. So it's going to do two things. It's going to check whether the token is good, and if it is, then it's going to refresh it. And what I want to do is I want to abstract this sign function right here, just because I want to make sure we're creating the same token in every place, and I want to make the token expire in 7 days. I think a week is a pretty good amount of time if the user hasn't used it. So in utils over here, I'm just going to export. So we're going to export a function, and this is going to say sign, we'll say create token, and really we need a user from this. So we're going to copy this, and this is what we're going to use. And actually we don't really need a user, right? We just need a user ID. So we're going to say user ID, and that's what we're going to sign this with. Right. And I'm just going to say export const create token. So I'm just going to create my function like that. And I don't know if I need to explicitly, let's go ahead and say integer here, since we know it's going to be an integer. And, oh, actually, no, it's not going to be an integer. It's going to be a string. I forgot about that. There we go. Okay. So we're signing this, and then I want to say expires in 7 days. And you guys could change this if you wanted it to expire in a different amount of time, but that's what I want to use. So from utils, I'm going to get context and also create token. So now I'm just going to call create token, passing in the user ID, like that. And login also returns a token, so we're going to do that here. Alright, so let's head over to our schema first and add a refresh token mutation. So I'm going to say refresh token. So I want to take a token, and if it's a valid one, and we must get a token, so I'm going to make that a required. If we get a good token, we're going to return an auth payload from that. Okay, so let's head back over here and let's create this. So I'm going to say async refresh token, because I want this to be an async function too. And we can just copy this info here. Okay, so what are we going to do in this function? So like I said, first thing we want to do is make sure we have a valid token. So our arguments, one of the arguments is token. So in our utils, this function is called get user ID from that. So we can just call this function really. And if it works, so get user ID. Get user ID. So if we call that, passing in our token. So if this doesn't throw any errors, we know we're good, so we can sign our token. So from that, I'm going to return, and we're going to return a token. And actually, you know what? I changed my mind. Instead of an auth payload, let's just return a string with a new token, because I'm not going to return the user with the refresh token. I'm going to return create token. And we need to pass in the user ID, which we get here. So user ID. Alright, cool. So this is how our refresh token is working. We're verifying the user is legitimate, or not the user, but the token is, by checking in here. Let's add space. By calling this function. And if this function works, we're able to parse the token correctly. We got a good ID from this, and the token's good. The secret works. It hasn't expired. No errors will be thrown. So on our client side, we're going to check if this throws any errors. And if it throws any errors, we know something went wrong. We got bad. Otherwise, we get a good token back. So this is how we're going to refresh. So I think that's all the work we need to do on the back end. Let's head over to the front end. So I'm going to create a new route called we'll say this check token.js, and this is going to be the route that we go to now. So that's going to be our slash route and check token. Okay, so in this guy, I'm going to, whoops. I guess I can copy, nah, we'll just write it, there's not that much. And okay, import React from React. And then for this, we're gonna have a class. And I can just export, no, we're gonna call Mutation, so we're gonna export default at the bottom. Up at the top, we're gonna have a class, check token, extends react.component, render. So here we want to render like a loading. So I could just say like text loading ... or you could just display a blank screen or some kind of indicator. Oops, and we're going to display that while we make our call to the backend. So here we're going to import GraphQL from React Apollo, and we're also going to import GQL from GraphQL tag, and then we're going to have component did mount. Oops, not catch. This is where we're going to make our call to the mutation. Here we're going to say GraphQL, pass in our check token, and then here we're going to say const refresh token, and this will be a mutation. And then we're going to go grab the stuff that we need to put there in a second. Refresh token, and make sure we import text from React Native. Alright, so I'm going to head over to localhost 4000. That's where our server is running, and we can type out our query. So let's make sure we see it. So refresh token, perfect. So mutation, I'm going to pass in a token to this, which is going to be a string, and we're going to call refresh token. Make it pretty, copy, paste it. Alright, so notice how this function is working. So it's going to render a loading screen at first, and then this is going to be an async function here. Async. And this async function is going to call the mutation. So we're going to say this.props.mutate, and we need to pass in our variable. So variables, and in this case our variable is token. And where do we get the token? From async storage. Async storage. So here we could say await async storage dot get item, and here we can get our item, and that's what we're going to pass in as a variable. And remember how this is asynchronous, so that's why I'm awaiting. And then when this mutation ends, we're going to say const response, and we can just console.log the response for now and see if we get a string back. And here we need to specify the key. And if we head over to login, we can see what our key was, this guy. And it's a good idea with these sort of things, because this is constant, to just make a constants.js, and here I'm just going to export const. We can just call this token key, and I'm going to copy him, and then we're just going to use this variable, and it doesn't like it because we only have one thing in here and we're exporting const, but we're going to just leave it there for now because we might add more constant things later. So now here what I want to do is I want to use token key, and Visual Studio Code was nice and auto imported it for me. Now remember, we're also using this on the not products but the sign up page. So you want to do the same thing here and use token key, and again it imported automatically from constants for me. And we're going to do the same thing here. So token key, that's the item we want to grab. So this should be the token that's stored in async storage. Now let's double check. Oh, I always do this. GQL should come directly from GraphQL tag. I think that we're good to go now. We see loading. Cannot read property get of undefined. Let's just take a look at what's happening here. We're getting a GraphQL error. Let's see on our server if we get any logs. Cannot read property get of undefined. Alright, so this looks like a problem with our server. So let's hop back over to our utils, and it says object.getUserID utils line 10. Alright, so that's this. So it was not able to get the authorization. I forgot about this. So we're actually not sending the token on our request like is expected. So here get user ID is expecting the token to be sent in the header, which we're not doing. We're actually passing the token in as a variable right here. We'll go over how to send it in the header in a different video, but since for this one we're already sending this, I'm just going to say context, and then we can set an optional guy here, which will just be token. So right here I'm going to say, and he adds bear in front, so we'll say if token, then we're going to skip this, otherwise. So this is authorization. I'm thinking about the best way to do this so we don't do this twice. I think I'll set authorization here. Let's say let JWT, we'll say let's move the token up here. So we're gonna say let token, and here I'll say JWT token, and by default the token is going to be just an empty string. So if we are given a JWT token, then we're going to say token is equal to JWT token. Otherwise we're grabbing it from the header. So to grab it from the header, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to say token is equal to that. So now we're going to check if token, okay, this looks good. So sorry guys, I was just like thinking what the best way to do this so we don't repeat code. So here's how I'm doing it. So we're either going to get the token from the context or from the second variable here. So first I'm checking if this variable is given to me, which is just the token, and if it is, we're good because I haven't given the token. Otherwise we're going to read the header. This is what we're going to do for all other requests that we send, because you don't want to be adding over here, like for example in publish, I don't want to pass in my token, right, for every single one, because that gets cumbersome. So back over to utils. So now we're checking, otherwise we'll go ahead and check the headers, and if we have a token from one of these two, we'll verify it. Now we just need to make sure to call this correctly too. So get user ID, we're going to pass in context and our token. Perfect. And okay, that restarted with no problem. Let's go ahead and restart our app now and recall that. Alright, doesn't look like there's any problem, and we get a promise back. It looks like I just forgot to call await on it, and I did, so let's call await, and we'll let that refresh. We'll make another call. So data, refresh token, we have our string. Perfect. So let's wrap this in a try catch. Catch. So if we get an error, we know something went wrong, that our token's bad or something. So what we're going to do, and we can actually do, we should really do a check up here. Say token is equal to this. If not token, then we're just going to return from this function, and we're going to say this.props.history.push, and we're going to go to /signup. Right? So if we didn't get a token from async storage, there's no point in even doing the mutation at all. So we'll go ahead and just push to sign up. Otherwise, we know a token exists, so we're going to try to check the token and see if it's good. So we'll go ahead and do this try call, and I'm going to say response up here. And in our catch, again, we know the token has expired or something. So let's go ahead and push to sign up. And I'm going to return at the bottom here because I'm going to put some code down here. Otherwise, if we made it this far in the function, we know we got a good response. So we can get refresh token, which is going to be response.data. And we can say await async storage because we want to set the new token. So set item token key and set that string that we just got, refresh token. All right, and then we're gonna push on to the products page. So products. So now this should take us to the products page. We see the word hello, which I don't know if that's the products page. I don't know what we have on there. Yep, it says hello. Let's just say this is the products page and add a style on this so it's easier to see. Margin top, let's just say 50. Alright, so you saw it like kind of for a second there say loading, and then we move to this page. So it does indeed validate our token, okay? I want to do one last thing to demonstrate that this does work. So at the top here, I'm actually just going to clear my token. So await set item token key is equal to an empty string. So this is me basically resetting it. So the reason why I'm doing this is to make sure we do indeed go to the create page. So perfect. We can delete that. And now it cool each time. So if I log in, Bob at Bob, I think it's Bob2 at bob.com. We're now going to add the token back to async storage, and I think, okay, that just took a little bit to load. So here we go. This is the products page. I'm going to refresh, and it should read the token. Yep, read the token from async storage and correctly went here. So nice. So now we have this intermediate page called check token that'll redirect us to the correct page whether we're logged in or not. And additionally, it refreshes the token. That way the user can continue using the app and not have to re-log in after a week. But if the user doesn't use their app for a whole week, then they will have to log back in because their token's going to be expired. And we catch that with this little catch right here. Alright, that's it for this video, guys. In the next one, we'll start working on that products page. See you then.